The federal government will tonight tell us efforts to bring home Nigerians trapped in Ukraine in the wake of Russian invasion. As parents protest in Abuja, Foreign Affairs Minister Geoffrey Onyema is our guest tonight. And Education Minister walks out on students who today staged protest over university lecturers' strike. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye in Abuja. Again, the streets of Abuja, the nation's capital, saw yet another protest. Protesting members of the National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, defied security at the National Assembly gate and to protest against the lingering strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU. The students, led by the national president, Sunday Asefon, gathered on the morning earlier today at the Unity Fountain in Abuja, displaying various placards with inscriptions. Several of them, they were chanting songs of solidarity. Meanwhile, the meeting between the minister, after all the protests, they wanted to see the minister. There was some kind of obstruction in their way, but eventually they got to meet with the minister. And the Minister of Education's meeting with them didn't quite end as perhaps how they wanted it. And the protesting Nigerian student ended with the meeting in a deadlock as the minister walked out on them.
Our grievances is so clear. We want ASU and federal government to find an equilibrium to resolve this crisis. We want this strike to be called off as a matter of urgency. We don't want any story. We don't want any story from anybody because we believe, Nigerians students believe, after ASU strike, no amount of days or weeks or months they spend or years, the member of ASU will be get paid. The member of the federal government will get paid. Who pay Nigerian students? Nobody. And we are saying this again and again. For over a decade, federal government and ASU have never seen students to be on streets on issues like this. But it is our time for us to take our destiny by ourselves. And that is why we are out. And what we are calling on the two parents, which is the federal government and ASU, because their children are not in the public education. It's because their children are schooling over outside the country. Their children are in private university. That is why they don't care about us. Wasting our time every day, every time. We are saying enough of this madness from the federal government and ASU. And we are calling on them to call off this strike permanently. If they fail to call off, they tell they are meeting tomorrow.
That is worthy of even attention is you said students should be involved in this, and I think probably this is a very good thing.
Thank you, sir.
And it is the only thing I'm going to take out of what you have said here. Thank you very much.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
So that was how it ended at the meeting between the students and the minister. We'll perhaps see, we're looking forward to how this all will pan out and how it end. Obviously, we are understanding that there is supposed to be a meeting between the Minister of Labor and some other stakeholders had to interfere in this matter, so the strike will be brought to an end. We'll see how that happens tomorrow. But our guest tonight on the program is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Before we get talking, let's check out some of your political roundup stories.
The track race for the 2023 presidency might have begun without the umpire blowing the whistle. Perhaps the search for a credible candidate with the right leadership skills seems to be the driving force for the Citizens Coalition for Osinbajo, as this group earnestly asks Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, to throw his hat into the ring in the contest to be Nigeria's president come 2023 general elections. The convener of this group, Pastor Yomi Kasali, believes Vice President Osinbajo's high-performance credentials in leadership service makes him the best candidate for 2023 presidency. A civil society organization, the Project Nigeria Group, believes that the Minister of State for Education, Mr. Emeka Nwajuba, is the best person to be selected as the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress. The spokesperson of the group, Mrs. Nana Mudupe Nwodi, explains that the support group wants to project a personality that has the capacity to engender a united, indivisible, and functional Nigeria. The State High Court sitting in Abakaliki has dismissed the suit challenging the defection of Governor David Umahi of Ebonyi State from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress. Delivering his judgment, the presiding judge, Honorable Justice Henry Njoku, stated that the plaintiff came by originating summons seeking the court to hold the defendant, Governor David Umahi of Ebonyi State, having defected to the APC from the PDP, the party under which he was selected, ought to vacate the office of the governor upon defection, and that the plaintiff, having come second in the 2019 elections, be sworn in instead. Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike has kicked off a new phase of project delivery in the state with the flag off of the construction of the 10th flyover to be undertaken by his administration between 2019 and now. At the ceremony in Obio Akpoluhu government area, Governor Wike tasked the people to demand accountability from public officers, saying project delivery should form the yardstick to vote for candidates in 2023. The Inter-Party Advisory Committee, IPAC, says it agrees with President Muhammadu Buhari on the contentious Section 84, subsection 12 of the new Electoral Act, which makes it mandatory for political appointees to resign from their positions before participating as delegates at party congresses and conventions or aspiring to elective office. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the national chairman of IPAC, Mr. Yaba Gisani, explains that the section runs contrary to the provisions of Section 40 and 42 of the Nigerian Constitution on fundamental rights of eligible citizens to participate in the process. The chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Cross River State, Alphonsus Eba, is calling on the Chief Justice of Nigeria and the President of the Court of Appeal to put people of integrity at the tribunal to do that which is just and in accordance with the judiciary. Speaking with journalists in Calabar, the Cross River State capital, the chairman explained that the party's victory in Ogoja Iyala Federal Constituency by-election was based on merit, and if the opposition decides to go to court, the APC is ready and it won't be a thing of surprise to them.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. It doesn't look like things are abating in Ukraine as we speak, following the invasion by Russian forces in that country, as the attacks have left devastation on the ground, with the capital of the country, Kyiv, terrified by the strikes and the series of them that we've seen in the past days. Today also show that things are really getting bad because of the pictures that are coming out of that country, especially the capital now. There has been seen some siege by the Russian forces. There have been some repels by the Ukraine forces, but it does look like there has been some casualties on the side of the Ukrainian government. The big question on everyone's lips as we speak is how safe are the Nigerians in that country? If we still have anyone of Nigerian descent or Nigerians who are still in that country, these are very big questions that need answers. So tonight, we're hoping to get some answers, and we are being joined by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. He's a Nigerian lawyer, called to the Nigerian bar in 1983. Several years of working with international organizations like the World Intellectual Property Organization, and he rose to become the Deputy Director General for the Development Sector in 2009. In November 2015, Mr. Onyema was appointed Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs by President Muhammadu Buhari. Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, is our guest tonight on the program. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Perhaps not the best of time around the world. Perhaps in your office, I know you've probably been having sleepless nights over the situation in Ukraine and perhaps a number of Nigerians living in that country. Do we have an idea of just how many Nigerians live officially that you have records of? How many of them are there in Ukraine?
Yes, we reckon that there are about 5,600 students, and that if you add other Nigerians, that it'll be around 8,000.
So in this sense, those are the official figures that you have.
But estimates.
There might be more than that possibility.
Probably not. Yeah, around 8,000.
I see the overtures and the communication line that has been opened by the federal government since this happened. Perhaps some people may not be too comfortable of the proactivity of the government side, and perhaps not in the knowledge of how much you're doing. Can you give us a sense of just how much you're doing at the moment in the rescue or the evacuation of Nigerians from that country?
Yeah, well, first of all, we are in touch with the ambassador in Ukraine and his staff, and directed them to set up a hotline for the Nigerians in the Ukraine and to maintain contact with them, giving them advice as to what they should be doing and how they should stay safe. Then in addition to that, we are in constant contact with the ambassadors and diplomatic missions around Ukraine. So we have Poland, of course, Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, and Russia. And because once the people started moving to the borders, because obviously the airspace was shut, so the possibility of moving in and evacuating Nigerian citizens was no longer there. And of course, the Russians were actually targeting some of the airfields. So the next phase was to get the Nigerians to the borders, the closest borders, as safely as possible, and to evacuate them to the capitals and to send and then to begin an airlift. So we've done that. We got the embassies to send staff to the border points in those countries I've mentioned, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and assist the Nigerians who are coming through, arrange shelter for them, and also food for them. So this is being done. You can imagine it's a bit chaotic, the whole arrangements, the panic and so forth, and disorganized. And of course, there have been the, very distressing news of maybe some discrimination. It was being claimed that Nigerians being turned back at the border. Initially, it was that Nigerians were not being allowed across the border by Ukrainian border guards. So I called the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. I was actually surprised to get him because, in the situation in which they're in, but he took my call and we spoke at length, and I communicated to him the great concern of the federal government that this might be happening and that it was totally unacceptable. He said no, that the directives that the border guards had were to allow foreigners to go through unimpeded, and that the only restrictions were on Ukrainian male between the ages of 18 and 60. So he said he'll come back to me just to verify again and to reassure me. And he called 15 minutes or so later, and he said, and he wrote it actually, that it's official, it's confirmed that these are the directives, and this is what the border guards have been directed to do. So as I said, we arranged for the embassy officials to go to the borders and start ferrying Nigerians to the capitals. And in the meantime, here in Abuja, we started organizing for the airlifts. Wanted to know from all those countries how many Nigerians had now crossed the border and were now in those various countries. So as of today, we were hoping that maybe we would be able to get the flights out by today, but we needed to be sure of the numbers, because obviously, the planes would need to know, so to know which size planes to deploy and so forth. So we made Romania the hub, and so there are about over 1,000 Nigerians who have crossed, who were there. And then Poland, about 250 or so there. Budapest, Hungary, similar number, 200 and something. Slovakia is rising rapidly, also around the 200 mark. There's some Nigerians in a place called Sumy, closer to the Russian border. And so I've been in touch with the ambassador, given him some numbers to keep in touch with them, and about 150 of them, and now looking to cross into Russia. And so we've asked the ambassador in Russia to try and get a permit for them to transit Russia, and we're hoping that by Wednesday we'll now start deploying planes to go and start lifting, bringing back the Nigerians.
So we are in good communication with Russia also.
Yes, I mean, we have an ambassador in Russia.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, because of the situation there, one might think that as chaotic as things are, there might be some hostilities also around Russia and the airfields and all that. Is it safe to fly in and out of Russia?
No, not to fly, to go by road. Oh, yes.
So,
yes.
I mean, those Nigerians who are going into Russia, they're crossing into Russia, how safe are they to get into Russia?
Yeah, well, not just to Russia. When I spoke to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, his advice actually was that people shouldn't be moving to the borders, that, there are risks. And the advice was to stay in your homes, ideally in basements, and not to be close to windows and so forth. But obviously people have started moving, Ukrainians as well. In fact, in the majority are Ukrainians fleeing and other nationalities. So yes, there's an element of risk there. But then I also spoke to the Russian ambassador. I said to him, look, listen, we have Nigerians in Ukraine. Your troops are moving in, and we want certain guarantees for our citizens in Ukraine. Of course, they cannot, well, he didn't, he's not in a position, I suppose, but he did argue that they were targeting military installations and not, civilian places of abode and so forth. But, that's not a total reassurance as far as I'm concerned. So there will be an element of risk, and there always is with these kind of travel in those circumstances. But but they are quite keen to head into Russia from Sumy in Ukraine, and so we're putting in place, ask the ambassador to please get them transit permits.
So, with my little mathematics and the numbers that you have put out now, and Budapest, Poland, Slovakia, it does look like Hungary. We have about 2,000 people that are probably ready for evacuation back to Nigeria, and this might happen tomorrow. Or
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
We're hoping, yes.
Hopefully. And Air Peace is doing this for Nigeria?
And Max Air, we also want to bring in too. So Air Peace and Max Air.
Okay. So in all of these, how many Nigerians so far, because you said you opened the line, how many Nigerians have communicated with the Nigerian government?
A lot, through various means, a huge number. I'm communicating also with the embassies as well, and communicating with individuals that they know. But we have a situation room, and, calls are coming. But also, we've directed our embassies to be the focal points for them, because they're the ones on the ground. And we've given them the numbers to call. I've been personally, sending out numbers to various people that have been reaching me directly.
So are you worried about the situation at some of those borders? We've seen pictures, videos of people obviously angry, and how some racist tendencies have emerged from those scenarios. What can you tell us about those scenarios?
Well, they're deeply distressing, totally unacceptable, because it's just beggars belief that in a situation of such crisis, that racism would, rear its ugly head. And this is what I communicated very strongly to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Ukraine. So, so that's something that we absolutely deplore, and, make clear that we cannot accept. Poland is also, there were some of these videos showing that there could also be some, aspects of discrimination on the Polish side too. So we got in touch immediately with the Polish authorities and told them this is what we're hearing. It's totally unacceptable. Of course, the Ukrainians and the Poles said, that this is not what is supposed to be happening, and this is not what should be happening, that everybody should be allowed to go through. And the Polish authorities told us not only are they allowing everybody to come through, but even those without documents and undocumented, that they're just letting everybody come through. So we put a lot of pressure on them, and that's really what we can do at the moment. And, the numbers increase that are going through.
So can you give us some level of affirmation or some kind of assurances that those kind of tendencies that we saw were not directly targeted at Nigerians? Is it just a racist thing, or because some are saying we saw some videos that are very worrying that they're targeted at Nigerians, and we've seen this kind of thing happen on African soil. Happening outside of Africa again gives a lot of worry.
Well, it was interesting because I was watching a BBC program, and the Indians were being interviewed. And they had exactly the same complaints. And if you go online and you look at it, that they were being discriminated against at the border, not being allowed to go, exactly the same complaints. That's on the side of Indians, So, look, listen, these things can never be condoned, and they're totally unacceptable. We saw very distressing scenes, and and as I said, we were very strong with regards to the Ukrainian authorities at the highest level, and also with the Polish authorities, and they are doing everything possible to ensure that that those kind of things don't happen. Our ambassador and people, they were at the border, and they were also implying that these things were going on, and that that they could see that they were given prioritizing certain races, in going through the border, because we're talking about long queues, 30 kilometers, tens and tens of kilometers long at the border. So it is what it is at the moment, and we're making every effort to ensure that our people will come through and will be treated with dignity and respect. So this is really what we are doing. And as I said, of course, I even forwarded to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine all these complaints and all the things on social media, because initially he said it had nothing to do with race. There was just a chaos that, existed at the border points. Yes, there will be chaos because so many people trying to get out and everything. And then I just kept on forwarding things to him. So expecting that they should now ensure that, their people behaved, in a humane way towards those who are trying to take refuge, seek refuge in other countries. And it's clear, all the international conventions and so forth. So yes, extremely distressing, and we're following it still. And in fact, I gave an interview. I got a call from Washington Post, and interestingly, it was a WhatsApp call, and then I had been in touch with some people that told me of some Nigerians that were experiencing real difficulties at the border, and I got a call on the main line from them, and I put it on speaker so that the Washington Post lady, and she heard the whole conversation of this gentleman, Mukhtar, describing what he and his brother had gone through at the border. So we really want to get it out there as well, that these are the things that are apparently happening.
I pray a scenario never comes through. I hope no Nigerian has been caught in these nightmare, these crossfire.
No, we pray that that continues to be the case, that they remain safe, and that we get them all across the borders safely, at least those that want to cross the borders. Yeah, no, they're all safe. There have been no cases of Nigerians being injured or God forbid, killed.
Okay, so good news that so far the reports that we're hearing is people trying to get out of that country. But just again, so a lot of people are trying to make these efforts tonight more of education for those who are worried about their loved ones who are trapped in Ukraine, and also give some insight to those who might get a clip of this conversation out there to those who are trying to get out. Could you describe to anyone who might be listening as we speak on the best ways to get out? For example, if anyone is still trapped in any part of Ukraine, maybe in Kyiv or any part of the Ukraine for that matter, how they can easily get out? Because I saw online the efforts of under your office where people, the description of the best routes and the best places to go. Can you tell us, for the sake of those who are listening and watching now, what are the best ways to go around? If anyone, because you say over 5,000 people, and yet with just about 2,000 that are yet out.
And maybe not everybody wants to go out. And you see, Ukraine is the second largest country in Europe. It's a huge landmass. Yeah. So, so the Polish border is not within reach for, people in maybe eastern Ukraine and so forth. So it really depends on where you are physically and geographically as to which border. The ideal is to minimize the time that you are traveling out, exposing yourselves to, to danger. So you want to go to the closest border to you, wherever you happen to be. So that's why I say that 150 Nigerians want to go to Russia. They're in Sumy. That's the closest border to them. We're trying to make that possible for them to be able to get into Russia. There's some who were able to, having some difficulties in, I think, the Polish borders, and they went to the Romanian border, and they announced that it was easier to get through there, and so forth. So I think the first thing is the closest border to you, and if that appears not to be possible, maybe because of the queue, then the nearest border, after that.
There are those who are bothered about the response time of the Nigerian government, that it was too sluggish, and perhaps Nigerian government was not proactive enough. Well, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, well, it depends what you mean by proactive. The majority of people did not know the Russians would invade. Putin was saying, we are not going to invade. That this is just Americans, just getting, giving them a bad name, as it were, So the Americans withdrew their staff. The UK, they also withdrew their travel advisory. We got in touch with our embassy staff there. They are in the best position to know the situation. And, at every point, the ambassador said, no, things are calm here. There was an interview on BBC with Nigerian students living there. They said, no, that there's absolutely no problem. Everywhere is calm. The embassies in the Ukraine themselves were cooperating, and they were issuing joint, assessments of the situation. And they were advising their people not to evacuate, Now, we didn't know how things were going to evolve. So if the Russians had not gone in, these students had left, they were going to have, they knew that themselves, that they might not even be, allowed to return, because the Ukrainian government obviously wanted people to stay and to show that things were, perfectly normal. So, but we, I said to the ambassador, look, let's err on the side of caution and advise all those who want to leave, And, but, that's what it was always going to be. Leave on your own volition. And the government advises you, if you want to do that, to do that. So, the proactivity there, I think, 80%, as you can see from all the people fleeing, did not expect this to happen.
Because if the US and the UK evacuated their people.
They're diplomats mainly.
Yeah.
Yes. And then they now advised.
So that's the question, perhaps, where the issue of proactivity comes in. That if the UK and US government saw this coming, why is it that the Nigerian government didn't see it?
Not only Nigerian government, the rest of the world.
We are bothered about ourselves.
Where exactly?
Nigeria first.
Yes.
But why didn't we see this if the UK and US government saw this?
Because the Russians who they were saying were going to invade were also saying they were not going to invade.
But can you trust the Russians? There's a history to that.
Well, I wouldn't go there in terms of, relations with countries. We have excellent relations with Russia, by the way, and I've had a history of very good relations with Russia. No, the point is that an assessment was made by the people on the ground. So, the ambassador and all the other ambassadors there, and this was we had to rely to a large extent on that. But the point is that the American advisory, you evacuate your diplomats. Yes, they have that obligation. But a travel advisory is just advising your people that you should get out. It's up to them whether they decide to get out or not. So we also put that out, that, this is a situation. Those who want to leave, feel they need to leave, they should leave. They should do so. But we cannot force them to leave.
Well, we'll go on a break now, but our diplomats, are they safe?
We're probably going to try and get them out now. They're safe, they are.
But I'm not sure it's safe to continue to stay there.
Yeah,
we're trying to get them out. How soon are we getting them out?
Well, yeah, this year we're going to get them out fairly soon. Clearly, as these people are now, things getting closer, we're in touch with them. The moment they think that they've asked, their families have left. So so we'll probably get them out.
So the family of the diplomats, or Nigerian diplomats, have left Ukraine?
Yeah, have left Ukraine.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a break, Honourable Minister, and when we come back, we continue our conversation. So much to talk about and unpack. What are the standard operating procedure in this kind of scenario that's playing out in Ukraine? Our relationship between Ukraine and Russia, are we caught in between? What is Nigeria's foreign policy? These are loads and loads of questions that the minister will be answering when we return from this break, everyone. Join us again. Welcome back to the program, everyone. Let's continue our conversation with the Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyema. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Minister. Let's get a sense of, because we've had this conversation on this program, and the concern is just how will Nigeria respond to this situation. And the Speaker of the House, they seem to be very much agitated about the situation. And I understand that you met with the lawmakers today and you explained things today. I hope things are now okay now with you and the lawmakers. Because the word used was to summon you.
I see. Well,
and you were summoned, isn't it?
Was it? Well, whatever they want to call it.
So how did that go?
It went very well. It was very well, yes.
You were able to douse the tension, or you were able to explain to them what you were doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the worry also was that maybe there was not enough that was being done on the side of the Foreign Affairs Ministry.
No. What happened was essentially just for me to provide some information for them, and their willingness to key into whatever we're doing so that it becomes a whole-of-government approach.
Because one of the things they even said was that if there was going to be the concern of bureaucracy, that they were going to override the executive, override in that user word, to make sure that they independently send planes and get Nigerians out. But we've had this conversation on this program when a former military officer explained the scenario playing out. And I wanted to know, in terms of the procedure in which you are employing in bringing them back, the worry is whether or not you can use passenger aircraft to bring them home, whether or not the airfields around that region is safe enough to use passenger aircraft, whether or not the military shouldn't be involved in this kind of situation. And the question is whether the Nigerian military has the capacity to be able to evacuate in that scenario. What are you using passenger aircraft? Are you involving the military in this evacuation?
No. I think, it's good you asked this question to clarify things. Ukraine is under attack. The airport, the airspace has been closed. So any question of going into Ukraine to airlift anybody out is completely out, okay? So now, for the first couple of days, there was a shock there. The Russians had moved in, and the bombardment started. At that point, there was nothing anybody could do because you could not. We called immediately the Ukrainians, It was impossible. The airfields were closed. Okay, now people started moving to the borders. So they're moving into other countries. So what we are doing is we're going to airlift them from those countries in which they find themselves. So, so there's no danger because those countries are not at war and those countries are not under attack. So basically, that's
so there's no involvement.
So you don't need
military involvement.
You don't need
nothing.
military involvement because those countries have commercial airlines going in and out of them. But but we're going to charter, and Mr. President has been extremely gracious and generous and has approved that this line of action for the government to provide planes.
So Nigeria is paying for the evacuation.
Absolutely.
What's the standard operating procedure when they're returning? As they're entering the country, you document them over again?
Yes, also when they're leaving there, they should be, documented and, and boarding the planes. As I've said to you, Air Peace and Max Air, we are chartering them, their planes, and we're going to go.
How many aircraft are going?
Well, on Wednesday...
There are about 4 countries you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so we're looking at about 4 to 5,
And they're going
countries.
at the same time?
Well, yeah, probably. I mean, the exact logistics, I cannot tell you precisely, but the idea, what we've been told, is that one of the airlines has 4 planes at their disposal that they can send, deploy, and the other airline has one huge one, a jumbo jet, a 747. So it's also for our mission on the ground to let us know how many Nigerians are now ready to be airlifted, and that will be the basis on which we'll decide which aircraft will be used. So with about 1,000 and so in Romania, Bucharest, that will probably be about 2 planes, including a 747. Because 747 takes about 500 and something passengers, So that's how we're going to be looking at it. And of course, as we're speaking now, there'll be more Nigerians, going. But not all of them want to come back to Nigeria, you see. And not all of them, by any stretch of the imagination, want to come back. That's going to pose certain problems for us because these countries have very graciously accepted to take them in without visas and on the understanding that they can stay for a certain period of time in those countries. So for some countries, it's like about 2 days, 3 days that they can stay. And Romania, for instance, I believe it's 5 days. So we also have an obligation to take these people back. And the challenge might be for those who don't want to come back. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Okay. So another issue is whether or not Nigeria as a government has learned any lesson from this scenario.
Well,
what has this scenario taught us? I mean, from your ministry point of view and from the Buhari government point of view, what lessons have we learned?
Well, one thing I think is that, and we were discussing that today with some foreign diplomats, is that if the U.S., maybe coming back to what you said, starts evacuating their people, then we should follow suit, probably, and we should probably follow suit. That's one, obviously, one clear lesson. And I think, obviously, the other one is, nobody was thinking, that once a crisis brews, that we should probably start planning for potential evacuation at that time. Not even if you haven't and you don't envisage a mass exodus, but that we should start immediately, probably in a place of conflict, looking at evacuations. But you see, were it not for the conflict itself, that the military has now gone in and these people are now going out, these are private citizens, that have gone to these countries in a private capacity. So ordinarily, it's not government that will necessarily be evacuating, people who want to leave themselves and should be leaving themselves, or parents who have, sent their kids there. You bring your kids out if things are looking, looking dangerous and risky, So, it's always a difficult situation. Whether government as such is the one that should be airlifting in any kind of crisis people out of the country.
Because, Minister, even if the government thinks about it, so I'm very sure that perhaps that's not in the immediate plans and thinking of the government, the issue of evacuating in the case of distress and crisis, the question of capacity of our military to be able to do military operations in evacuating. Because now what happens is when Nigerians, wherever they go, have the confidence that the Nigerian government has the thought at heart, and if Americans were kidnapped in northeast Nigeria and they could send their military to evacuate and rescue just a handful of American citizens, have spent that kind of amount of money and that risk to evacuate them, it does look like the government is worried and bothered and really taking responsibility for their citizens wherever they may be. Don't you think that that kind of effort gives an average citizen that we're proud to be Nigerians and wherever we go, our government has our back?
But we do that. It's just that very often people don't recognize these things. Some people went to Moscow for the World Cup on their own, because at that time, if you showed that you had a ticket to any of the matches, you could get into Russia visa-free. So what happens? You get thousands of Nigerians going for the World Cup, and after the World Cup, what happens? They start sitting in front of the Nigerian embassy and saying that they cannot, that they're stuck in Russia. The Nigerian government, Mr. President, approved that we send a plane to bring these people back. And I went to the airport to receive them, and they found the whole thing very funny. So we did that there. Those who went on an irregular trip, migrants trying to cross into Europe, and were all stuck in Libya, again, Mr. President approved that we send planes to evacuate them from Libya. So, we do these things, but I think it's not always acknowledged that, that the government actually does exactly the same thing. The Americans don't do that. If there are people who are stuck in going to World Cup, the American government is not going to go and start bringing them back because they suddenly decided to be stranded because they tried to.
I'm asking this question, Minister, because in South Africa, just down in the southern part of the continent, it's a totally different situation. But we've seen xenophobic attack on Nigerians consistently. It's happened. In Ghana, we've seen attacks on Nigerian businesses in Ghana. Yeah. And the question is whether or not the government of Nigeria is standing up to this kind of... So any part of the world, even if you hear an American or German or a British citizen, you probably you think twice before you can stage an attack on them because of the stance of their government.
We do it
on this kind of situation.
We do it all the time. We might not necessarily blow our trumpets, but we do it all the time. In Italy, when some Nigerian migrants were killed, we summoned the ambassador and we did a démarche in Rome, and they had to pay compensation for this Nigerian that was killed. In Indonesia, you saw the diplomat that was well, he was in a car and he was screaming that he's been taken to somewhere where he shouldn't have been and so forth. We immediately, let these people know that Indonesia was unacceptable and demanded an apology and also compensation. South Africa, exactly the same. We went there and we said to South Africans, this has to stop. And, we agreed, we sat down and we said, how are we going to stop these attacks on Nigerians? And we devised an early warning. We told them, look, listen, the best thing is an early warning agreement that we will put in place with certain responsibilities on all the South African agencies, So we did that. In Ghana also, we went and we engaged with the Ghanaian government, and they lifted at the time, which was 2-3 years ago, initially, the measures that barricading the shops of these Nigerian business people in markets, and we've been engaging with them ever since. So everywhere we've had these issues, the Nigerian government gets involved and and demands for
what
the
about
rights
the
of
UAE situation?
Of perspective. Yeah, what about the UAE situation?
I mean, because Nigerians are being refused work permit.
Yes.
They've not been able to renew. The UAE government, there's been a standoff. I mean, a few times we've seen the aviation ministry saying the reciprocity principle had been employed in terms of the carrier and planes landing in and out of Nigeria. And this kind of situation, people get offended when we get this kind of treatment. That Nigerian government probably need to do more so that we don't get this kind of disrespect.
Well, wait, hold on. Now, the UAE not giving work permits to Nigerians.
I mean, that's a different scenario.
Yeah.
We're talking about scenarios where Nigerian citizens are badly treated.
Like where?
It's a general treatment.
Like where?
In Ghana, we saw in South Africa.
But
You explained that.
And the South African government found it totally abhorrent that what their nationals were doing, and came down very, very strongly on that, especially in view of what Nigeria had done to help South Africa during their struggle, and we engaged at the very highest level. And I've put in place, as I said to you, we put in place a mechanism, an early warning mechanism for all the elements, the police, the ministers and all that, to be fully engaged in stopping these kind of things happening. So these are not state actors, Listen, 2 days ago, or was it last week, I was told by one of the ambassadors here that their nationals have been kidnapped, in Nigeria, and it's been happening all over. You can't blame the Nigerian government for that because these are not state actors. The government is not condoning that. So in South Africa, these actions, you can't condone it. I mean, these are criminals, a lot of the South Africans who are going in and robbing Nigerian shops and so forth.
How is the situation in UAE? Have you been able to intervene?
Yes, absolutely. I've intervened at the highest level with the minister. I've told him, and I'm in touch with the Nigerians there. I've told our ambassadors to do a démarche on them, and the UAE minister.
Sorry, for those who don't understand what
yes, okay, yes.
Sorry? So if you can break it down. For those who don't understand, it's a diplomatic language.
Yes. So, we've told our ambassador to make contact with the UAE embassy, because your embassies is your country in that country. They represent you there. So to meet with the officials of the government of the UAE and find out why it is Nigerians who want to renew their work permits, that their work permits are not being renewed. And they've done that. I have personally been spoken to the Minister, Foreign Affairs for Africa of the UAE, and the ambassadors, and to ask them, look, listen, this is what Nigerians are complaining about, and how can we resolve the issue? The answer at the time was that, look, listen, we're not discriminating against Nigerians. There's this COVID situation, and, across the board, these are measures that, that we're taking. The Nigerians in the UAE said to me that there had been, that there was a case of, I think, some Nigerian cults and all these cultists and all that who were operating there, that they killed, I think, an Emirati and various things like that. So that they felt that they wanted to also show the UAE government that they were putting some mechanisms in place as a Nigerian community to be more responsible in the way that they behave there, and that they wanted the UAE government to also know their position and how they themselves condemned what their compatriots, had been doing. So we are, we are doing everything we can at the government executive level and cooperating with these Nigerians there. They are saying that they want us to get to reach out at the highest possible level of the countries, So, Mr. President, to speak also to, to the ruler on this issue. But we're dealing with it, at At a pretty high level.
Some reasonable response and clarity on this?
Well, that's what I was telling you. Their response is that it's not discrimination.
Okay.
Okay? That across the board, they are rationalizing in their country in terms of, foreigners and jobs in there. Because every country is sovereign and can, determine
policies to drive. So let's
employed in their countries.
Yeah. So let's move quickly to a few because of the time that we have. Have you been able to interface with the Russian embassy in Nigeria? Because I know Nigeria is caught with a good relationship with Ukraine. In fact, perhaps our relationship with Russia is better than that of Ukraine. And from what we see, over $2 billion US might be at risk with what is happening. We have a military deal with Russia and all of that. Some people will say we have not heard, the rest of the world is condemning what Russia is doing. But what is Nigeria saying? What is Nigeria's stance on what Russia is doing on Ukraine?
The invasion?
In the invasion.
Yeah, no, we made that very clear. We condemned it. We condemned it. We said, we made a time without number. We said that, look, that first of all, that military force is not the solution. And we have spoken up about the territorial integrity of Ukraine, that we recognize its territorial, the integrity, territorial integrity, and also the sovereignty of Ukraine. And as we're speaking now in the UN General Assembly, there's a resolution on this whole issue. And, Nigeria's position is very clear, with the resolution that we do not condone this military intervention in another country.
Several countries have imposed sanctions on Russia. Is Nigeria making any practical move in that direction?
On imposing sanctions?
I'm asking. Ours may not be sanctions, but what is Nigeria's stance practically, apart from the statement that has been issued?
Yeah, and the UN, this is going to be a collective action of the United Nations has to act, and we are going to also act and engage within the framework of the United Nations. So if the United Nations, for instance, adopts and imposes sanctions on Russia, we will comply with UN resolutions on any matter.
How detrimental will that be to our investments concerned with Russia?
No, it will certainly, it will have an impact, it will have an impact. I'm not sure that we have huge investments in Russia. It's not a country in which we have very, very huge investment. We have good relations with Russia. But as I said, the Russians vetoed the Security Council. They're chairing the Security Council, and they vetoed the resolution there. So it's gone to the General Assembly.
Can we bear the anger of Moscow based on our relationship if we go the way UN goes?
No, if there's a UN sanction, but it won't. You won't have sanctions because the Security Council, Russia has a veto power in the Security Council. So you will not have a situation where the Security Council is going to accept to impose sanctions on Russia, because Russia has a veto power and is chairing the Security Council.
Just so we wrap up now, in all of this, the fear of, experts are saying, with the way things are going, and some of the countries of the world, the superpowers also taking side with Russia, some of the other superpower. You heard what Putin said about how he described Europe and the other Western countries and how he described them, and people are saying, if this thing, de-escalation is not measured or looked into, they thought what war might be just in the...
How did he describe them?
No, he was describing them as a community of, I've forgotten the other word he used. He used them as a community of something in the statement that we saw earlier today. What do you see that could happen, the worst case scenario, if there's no de-escalation?
Well, in this kind of situation, it is very difficult. Well, I think one thing is clear: the Western countries will not intervene militarily in Ukraine. And once that is that they're not going to intervene militarily in the Ukraine, I think you will not get a military escalation
can we be certain of that? That the Western world will not...
No, you can never be certain of anything.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you can never be certain of anything, but, you can assess certain situations and you can make a certain prognosis. And the way things are, and going by history, the Western countries will not, in fact, they've gone very far already in providing weapons to Ukraine, which is already something that's a bit unusual in that kind of situation. So I don't think it will escalate to an all-out war with the Russians on one side and the Western countries on the other side. Yes, I think that they are going to focus and prioritize economic sanctions. And why I also say this is because, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine gave a long interview yesterday, very optimistic and almost sounding triumphalist about how they're holding back the Russians and inflicted defeats on them. So, and they were not talking of military intervention.
Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, thank you so much that we've been able to talk as much as this on this matter, and I hope that the best will come out of it and people will not die any longer in this, and de-escalation will happen, hopefully. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
But that's our show for today, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Akimale. Bye-bye.